Welcome to another episode of Grief Heals, the podcast where we explore how it is that grief heals us with our relationship with ourselves, with one another, and our whole wide world. I am your host, Lisa Michelle Zega, and I am excited to have another conversation. Hello. Well, my journey of being a on the road kind of traveler worker has begun. So it feels in many ways, because I've been in transition for so long, like I've been doing this now for, I don't know, over a month. But here's the thing, I got all set up in Texas, and my office is like my sanctuary. And then I left. And so right now I'm sitting in a friend's, guest room slash just all purpose room in one of her big cozy chairs. But I've kind of created a makeshift little desk and recording area. And it feels very similar, except for the fact that I'm on a super cozy chair. Like when I was recording in my empty office before leaving California, and literally making, a place to sit on the floor and stacking boxes, you know. So this feels very makeshift, though more comfortable. And it just feels like, yeah, all right, this is the next several weeks are going to be like this, as I'll be on the road and leading workshops in Los Angeles, which I am so incredibly excited about what I get to do that I can hardly stand it. So I've been leading these workshops for organizations that work with people in transition, oftentimes who have been raised in poverty, who've experienced a lot of instability, a lot of generational injustice, and generational poverty, that are, closely linked to the injustice. And just working with people in understanding their nervous system and what's happening inside the body in all this instability. How do we bring resource to ourselves? How do we create stability within when, we've got all that we've known has been unstable around us and are still in transition. And so that training, that workshop, I got asked to add a component for really entering the workplace and spending time doing scenarios and just enacting, how would I say that? Putting together a plan to give someone some hands-on experience as well that could be transferable to any place of employment, and also to really harness the transferable skills that are within. So I could not have been in a more perfect setting to create this training, because I myself was in a place of real instability in many ways, although I did have a consistent place to sleep. I did have consistent food in my belly, and still do, right? So sometimes the level of instability is such that a person doesn't have a consistent place to sleep. In fact, the last training I did, there were 3 people who were using the organization that I was working for as their address. Why? Because they did not have a stable address, nor did they know where they were going to sleep each night. So is it any wonder that those 3 people would often doze off in the workshop, right? So I want to acknowledge that, because there's a level of stability that we can take for granted. So talk about grief, man. Wow. And historical grief too. And yeah. So back to what I was saying in terms of my own level of just, I was operating in a place that, living in a place that's not my own, setting up my office space that it just, there was so much wobbly underneath me. And where was I? I was at my mom's. And here's what I underestimated: all those just habituated ways of being in my family of origin, the kind of relationship like that is just, again, recycling my childhood in many ways, just the, familiar dynamics. And I underestimated my own response to just slip into automatic, and how much I would need to be interrupting the habit of being a particular way around my family and entering into those relationship dynamics. So here is a place, let me just intersect this with the grief that arose in me. And it wasn't until I like looked back on, oh my goodness, what is being asked of me here? And I felt this sense of, Lisa, honey, you are living in a fantasy. You are living in a fantasy of what you dream the relationship could be, and you're not actually living in the relationship that you have. And I noticed that I was just disconnected from myself, disconnected from my longing. So in just going on automatic and pushing for something that, like some sort of little girl fantasy, I was not being present to myself, what was happening inside me. I was not being present to my mom. I was just disconnected. And by the time I left, I was so utterly depleted. I was numb. And the whole time I was there, I had been engaging the practices that I know to interrupt my patterns, to stay present. I say that, and there's truth and non-truth in that statement, because I found it like just easier to slip away from myself. And at some point I was tired, and yeah, I don't quite have it like to how to frame this. When I recognized that I was holding on to, grasping with a desperate clutch that I didn't even recognize, some sort of desire of how I imagine in my fairy tale that the relationship could be. But see, I wasn't like dreaming in a way of possibility. I was clutching in a way of desperation. And the death that I was being asked to enter, at least this is what arose for me as I, just got alone, was to surrender whatever it is I'm clutching of how I think it's supposed to be, and what I thought it would mean that I relocate to Texas and live near my mom for the first time in over 30 years, closer to 40 years. And I just, I don't know, I thought I could just pick up and start fresh without all of our history and create what it is. But I could not do that clutching to a fantasy, clinging, holding, grasping, right? Like I can just even feel the desperation. I can see that almost clawing in me. And I I just was like, what would it be like to surrender this? And it felt so sad. And I did not want to surrender. I didn't want to engage with myself, the relationship as I perceive it. I just didn't. And when I came face to face with that as a possibility, I went to bed really, really sad, empty, numb. I woke up the same way. And then I had an experience that felt like, I went through death and rebirth. I came to the edges of my own limitation, collapsed in exhaustion, rested, and experienced an expansion for something new. What? I don't know. I don't know. And that's my experience. So, where I left off was in creating this training that I was telling you about. Coming to the edges of my own limitation, recognizing how much I was struggling to stay consistent in my own practices, realizing how just like fatigued I felt, how numb I got, how like lost at many points I felt. And then thinking about the people that I get to work alongside and some of what they are experiencing and have experienced that I don't know in my own like walk of life. I marvel at the provision to me, like marvel that I would get to have this experience of, wow, letting go of my own story, the way that I perceive my story, the way that I perceive what I've been through, the way that I perceive my relationship with my mom, and engaging practices to interrupt that story and to stick with that and to work with the way my brain is designed and to bring online my other forms of intelligence, to engage my right and left hemisphere and let those parts of my brain have a conversation in such a way that I could feel integrated and have access to something new. And I don't know if you know this. For years now, 20 plus more, how long? I've been investing my time, my energy, my money in growth and in cultivating something new for me so that I can help cultivate something new for others, so that I can be part of creating the kind of world that I want to live in. And I'll tell you what, this did not start as an altruistic endeavor by any stretch of the imagination. I believed, but I was not even aware that I believed this. I can just look and recognize I was on a quest to be someone other than me. Why? Because I wanted to claw my way out of my own human experience that felt really, really icky. Just icky being me, icky feeling like a fraud, icky just. And the reason that I work in grief space is because it was entering my grief, not just trying to come up with a new plan, a new tool, a new way to feel better, to be smart enough, good enough. Like, really, I just wanted to have the answers so that I could have a place in this world. And I thought something empty as having intellectual answers was going to change my internal experience. And I've been on that quest well over 20 years. And in fact, I've probably been investing um, my energy, my time, my money, like more than 20 years. But I mean, thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars over that amount of time. Um, and when I entered a fresh invitation of, that my losses were inviting me into experiencing love, and when I really entered that is when I began a life that, I don't know, I've always felt deeply, but I haven't always felt what my experience deeply. Like, does that make sense? Like, I'm the one that's cried, wailed at movies, and for other people's experiences, but really not in touch with my own. And when I delved into the loss of my boys, and I did not lose them to death, I lost them to just relationship being cut off. When and I died to being the kind of mom that I thought that I was going to be, that I worked so freaking hard to be, the kind of mom that was going to give them a completely different experience. Ooh, the kind of wife that I thought, and not just that I was going to be, that I thought I was. I read all the books. I had the, I feel like air quotes, but I'm holding my hot teacup and I'm like, no, no air quotes for me. I just thought I was going to be such a good wife, such a good mom, even such a good daughter. I really did. Such a good human. And then coming up against my own limitations and entering the loss of my boys. And then what it did is it invited me to say, hey, what do you need? And it invited me to take a deeper look at my own experience and to recognize that, the choices that I made, the things that I did, they actually made perfect sense with the knowledge that I had, the resources that I had, the upbringing that I had, the examples, all the things, and not even anybody to blame, just it all made sense. And I could recognize the gap between who I wanted to be for my kiddos and who I was. And you know what? That gap needed so much love. I needed so much love in that gap. And what do I mean by love? I needed patience. Patience, kindness, gentleness, like goodness, like nurturing, like caring for. And only entering there could I start to build the capacity to be the mom for them that, their adult selves would need, would want. The mom that could hear them, that could listen to them, that was not, tit for tatting with them. So this 30 plus days has been painful, stretching. I have felt like a hypocrite. I have wanted to just, like ask myself questions, the real unuseful kind, like, what the is wrong with you, Lisa Michelle? And you know what? Here's the thing. There's nothing wrong with me. I can ask myself, what happened, baby girl? What happened to you? Where did this come from? I can interrupt and create a new experience. And so I told you I arrived at my girlfriend's house. So I'm not back in California yet. I leave today. I arrived back at my girlfriend's house, utterly depleted, numb, woke up that way, was having a conversation with a girlfriend, and I said, well, it's like we are divine. We're divine image bearers having a human experience, divine human. And all of a sudden, the hairs rose on the back of my neck, all over my body. The pores seemed to open, goosebumps, came. I saw this flash of like the word incarnation. And the time it's taking to share this with you is so different than like it was in a flash. That's all I can say. And I was like, oh my gosh, I am going through the experience of coming up against my human limitations. Why? So that I can have death and rebirth. Why? So that I can expand, so that I go through the process of expanding into who I truly am as the one made in divine image. And I realized, yes, life is pushing us in many ways beyond our limitation. And the invitation in that is to die and raise again in a newness that expands us beyond, like I'm expanded today beyond who I was yesterday. And I will continue to expand and be pushed and go beyond and willfully go beyond even my human limitations. And think about this, just think about muscle and what it means when muscle is extended, right? Like it takes on more weight than it can bear. And it gets fatigued to the point where it cannot lift anymore, not another ounce. And then what happens? It breaks down and it comes back together. And when it does, it comes back together with more strength, more capacity. And so my human limitation, your human limitation, our human limitation, not a problem. Part of the process. And this is part of the workshop. We do this chant. I'm committed to the process, committed to the process. I belong here and I get what I come for. Your success is my success and my success is your success. When I get resistant, I get curious. That's what I was doing. I was getting curious. When I couldn't go anymore, I was like, oh, okay, what's being asked of me right here? And that's when I came up to I think I'm being asked to surrender. I think I'm being asked to surrender to the relationship I imagined. And I knew in my spirit the second that came to me that there was more hope for the relationship that I imagined by letting go than there ever is by grasping. To just accept what is, how it is, without anything or anyone needing to change, and allowing that love gets to come here. And I'm sure there can be so many questions like, what do you mean by that? And what about boundaries? And yeah, all valid questions and all things that we get to work out for ourselves. I'm in no way saying stay somewhere where, you're abused and that's just not the conversation I'm having right now. I'm really thinking about what it's like to be incarnate, to go through death and rebirth, to expand. And I am grateful that in some way I was stepping into the very workshop that I'm leading, taking it on in my own limitation. And here's what I know for sure, for sure, for sure. I will be with the people that are attending this workshop in a deeper way. Like we are in it together. And because I am more engaged in my own experience, wow, I could not have asked, I could not have designed a better experience for me to write this workshop or to deliver it. And I'm not doing this alone. You all know that. I've been with Jenna. She and I've been writing together and growing together, and she's been in this experience with me. We'll be delivering it together. Yeah. And it just didn't feel right to just keep saying me or whatever when this is so much a group endeavor. Anyway, I think that's what I'm sharing now. I will be, in all kinds of makeshift situations doing the recordings, and I'll let you know where I am and how it's going. And I'm just really, really grateful that Eric puts together questions for deeper reflection and deeper growth, because we're all on a journey. And it's just such a gift to reflect on our own human experience and come home, truly come home to who we are. And as we do, we come home to one another, we come home to the world. We recognize that the song's in my head, but in so many ways it's true. We are the world. We're not just in it, we are it. So with that, I'm going to set my cup down, my yummy warm tea. I'm going to extend my arms out. I'm going to invite you to come in and to recognize I am wrapping my arms around you with so much love. For you, for me, for all of us. Our human limitation is not a problem. We get to go through the process. Whew. As we grow into who we are in our divine image. All right. Mwah. So much love. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Grief Heals with Lisa Michelle Zega. The podcast is produced by me, Eric Simpson, in association with Jump Up and Down Productions. Music by Kendalian, Drunken Nights to Sunday Mornings, and Stefan Carlin, A Calming Ocean, A Common Notion. If you would like more information about the work Lisa does, point your browsers to legityou.com. That's LEGITYOU. Lisa can also be reached at lisamichelle@legityou.com. This has been a Jump Up and Down production.